So this is a direct follow-on from the last video where I was talking about during strenuous exercise, when you hit that mental wall. The mental wall meaning you're exercising and you're absolutely exhausted. Oh God, you know. And the mental wall being you begin thinking to yourself, I can't do anymore. Or in other words, I don't want to do anymore. And by means of intentionally thinking and talking to yourself in an affirming manner, you're able to breach that mental wall, which allows you to physically keep going about your exercise. You know what I'm saying? This is what I call self-hypnosis. And I want to dig a little deeper into this fascinating art of self-hypnosis in this video. So, look, is self-hypnosis something which needs to be mastered in order to breach this mental wall? Is it? It's a paradox. Because if you think self-hypnosis is something which needs to be mastered, then it is. But ultimately, what this means is you've come to the conclusion that time is a factor, in the sense, well, I can't, when I exercise and I hit that mental wall, I can't breach it. I can't breach that mental wall and keep physically pushing on. I can't, because I haven't mastered it yet. But give me time and I'll master it. But thing is, to me, this isn't true. You know what I'm saying? The truth is, self-hypnosis, when you hit that mental wall during strenuous exercise, self-hypnosis just simply needs to be actioned in the moment. In that moment, when you hit that wall, you have to action self-hypnosis in that moment. You know what I'm saying? If I could... So, for example, yesterday you might have done some crazy workout, some ridiculous exercise routine, which was madly strenuous. You know what I'm saying? Strenuous is a lovely word, by the way. And yesterday you hit that mental wall, and by talking to yourself and thinking in an affirming manner, you was able to breach that wall and physically continue yesterday. Okay? But today, you might do the very same, the exact same workout today. Hit that mental wall, and you begin thinking to yourself, I can't do anymore. And so physically, you stop. So in other words, that mental wall shuts you down physically today. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not something, self-hypnosis is not something which is just learnt. It doesn't just become something you know how to do. Again, for the fact that you simply need to action self-hypnosis each new time you train and each new time you hit that mental wall. Does that make sense at all? Good God. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but of course, the remembrance of yesterday's exercise, or in other words, the fact that you remember yesterday you was able to breach that mental wall, that can be really motivating. Remembering that yesterday you was able to do it can be motivating, but that remembrance in itself, today, the next time you exercise, that remembrance in itself, if the idea of stopping is strong enough, if the thought of stopping and not doing anymore is strong enough,
that remembrance alone won't get you through. Self-hypnosis will have to therefore be actioned again in that moment. God, does this make sense? I know you can't respond, or if you do, I can hear you anyway, but I hope that makes some sense. So, next question. Is self-hypnosis something anybody can do? Again, it's a paradox, because yes, self-hypnosis is something anybody can do if you're able-bodied enough to exercise in the first place, because not everybody is able-bodied enough to exercise, let's be honest. But if you are able-bodied enough to exercise in the first place, then yes, self-hypnosis is something anybody can do. But again, it's a paradox, because if you really don't think that you can self-hypnotize yourself into pushing yourself further physically, if you really think you can't, then you can't. That's the paradox, because it comes back to what I was saying in that last video. What I was saying in the last video was seeing the fact that you can always do more. Generally meaning, unless you're genuinely going to physically collapse, which is very, very rare, generally you can always do more. It's not the fact that you can't, it's you don't want to do any more. And you might see that as a fact, you might see the truth of that, you might not. Generally, when you begin thinking to yourself, I can't do any more, what that ultimately means is, I don't want to do any more. We can always do more. We can physically always do more. Generally. We can always physically do more. But yeah, self-hypnosis, it's fascinating. It's an art. It really is an art. Again, I'm not suggesting I've mastered it by any means. Personally, when I exercise, I train, in other words, whatever you want to call it, I train 4 times a week. Am I training to the point where I'm hitting that mental wall every time? No, I'm not. I'm just, I don't have any desire to personally train that hard, you know what I mean? I see the importance of keeping fit, so I keep fit by training 4 times a week, but I'm not hitting that mental wall. And so therefore, I'm not suggesting I've mastered the art, or I'm a master in the art of self-hypnosis. No way. But I suppose another question would be, is it even necessary to train to the point where you hit that mental wall, and therefore is it even necessary to breach the need to breach that mental wall and continue going further? Is that necessary? If you're an athlete, yes. If that's your profession, if you're a professional athlete, then you'll be pushing yourself all the time. But if you're just like me, you just enjoy it, you just like exercising. If you just have these goals, these desired goals which you want to reach, these physical desired goals, then that's all they are. Desired goals. You know what I'm saying? They're not actually a goal, a desire. A desired goal is not actually life or death, whether you do it or not. That's the truth. Am I suggesting you shouldn't have any physical goals? You shouldn't have any goals of completing a marathon or doing, ridiculous exercise? Of course, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have any physical goals, but I'm just saying it's not necessary. You can keep yourself fit by exercising at a fairly steady rate. You know what I'm saying? I'm not I'm not some fitness coach here. and I'm starting to sound like one. So you know what I'm saying? Obviously, if you're unfit, if you're unhealthy to begin with, and you've just started some new exercise regime, then you may well hit that mental wall earlier than somebody who's relatively fit already. If you're already unfit and you've just started exercising, of course, you may well hit that mental wall pretty quickly. That's obvious, but anyway, how are we doing for time? Good Lord. What have you learnt from watching these two videos? If anybody's watched these two videos on the topic of self-hypnosis, what have you learnt? Not a lot. Because, you know, there's nothing for me to teach you. Again, self-hypnosis, you can listen to it, you can listen to me talking about it, or anybody. Again, I mentioned David Goggins in the last video. You can listen to these guys talking about self-hypnosis, and you can't just take it on as intellectual knowledge. Oh, yeah, that sounds nice, self-hypnosis. You know, you literally have to action it. Put it into action yourself, you know what I'm saying? So, I guess the point of me making these two videos is just for the fact that, personally, I just find it fascinating. The fact that, generally, unless you're actually genuinely going to collapse, generally, human beings can always physically do more. Not like your vehicle. I drive a van. That's my vehicle. Personally, I drive a van, a white van. If my van runs out of diesel, boom, oh, it comes to a stop. It ain't going nowhere. If my old van runs out of diesel, it ain't going nowhere. But human beings, by means of self-hypnosis, thinking and talking to ourselves in an affirming manner, we always have the ability to do more. And I just find that fascinating. So, having said all this, maybe there's people that genuinely don't hit that mental wall because their desire to achieve a physical goal is so, you know, strong. Maybe some people never hit that mental wall, but I'd suggest those people are few and far between, personally. So, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now. Maybe I'm not even qualified to have made these two videos because, personally, I've not achieved any great feats of. I've never run a marathon. Yes, I exercise regularly, but I've never achieved any great feats of physical achievement. You know what I'm saying? So maybe I'm not even qualified to have made these two videos, but you can take them or leave them. I don't mind either way. All the best. Take care.